Can you get your 4-year bachelor's degree while active duty military? The answer is absolutely yes. I scoured Reddit forums and YouTube channels before I joined, and the consensus was generally that you could either, it's basically impossible or very highly unlikely for anybody to be able to actually do that while in the military. Me personally, I went in with a 4-year contract and I went from zero school to my bachelor's, graduated with a 3.9, and I did it using TA and financial aid. So I did it debt free, and I was able to save my GI Bill for later on. So that's why I want to make this video, to not only clarify that it is possible to do even in a 4-year degree, but also to make a comprehensive guide for you to follow and do it quickly in an optimized way. A lot of people in my work area ask me to help them, and I'm more than happy to do that. So I just want to make this more spread for people that are looking at coming in the military, specifically the Air Force, or people at other bases that are also looking at going into education while active duty. So I will be having on-screen references for everything that I'm talking about to try to make it easier, especially for people that aren't in the military yet. These acronyms and programs can get very confusing. And even if you are in the military, it can still get confusing. So I'll be sure to have those on the screen and support everything that I'm talking about. But I really want to make this comprehensive guide to show people how to do it the right and fast way of getting your degree. So before I get started, I do want to say that this is more geared towards people who either have little school or no school coming into the military. Obviously, if you already have your associates or even a bachelor's, most of this won't apply to you because you'll be already well versed in education. So first, I want to talk about the benefits that you can get while active duty military towards your education. You're going to be able to get currently a $4,500 fiscal year stipend towards your education. That could change in the next coming years to $3,500. It's been debated in Congress a couple times. And on top of that, you can get your financial aid, which if you're starting off in the military, you're likely to get the full benefit for financial aid. And both of those combined can pay for your school completely, and you can get debt free. You might have to pay out of pocket a tiny bit if you do accelerated classes while in university. But for the most part, those two things, tuition assistance and financial aid, will be able to cover all of your, from zero school to bachelor's, no problem. And you'll be able to keep your GI Bill for yourself for higher education, your spouse, or your next of kin. But you'll be able to save that GI Bill and be able to get your bachelor's debt free while active. The other benefit that this comes with, which is very crucial to how I was able to do this very quickly, is you get one free CLEP and one free DSST per test. So if you don't know what those are, I'll be sure to go over those later on. But essentially, you can take one test per class, and the first time you take it is completely free. But those are the overview pretty much of your benefits while on active duty. And I'm not going to go over the GI Bill because I didn't personally use it, and I won't use it until I use it for higher education like law school. So one of the first things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to create an education goal. Now, an education goal is basically a degree plan. It's telling the Air Force what degree you're going for, and so that way they're kind of keeping accountable of where their money is going, and they have a way to show for what degree you're working towards. You're not just wasting it. So with this education goal, it's very important to make sure you put an associate's or CCAF first, because if you put a bachelor's first, you can use TA for your bachelor's, which is fine, but once you get your bachelor's, you won't be able to go back and use TA for your CCAF or associates. It only works one way, this way. You can't get your bachelor's, then go back for your associates using TA. Instead, TA will only cover from you to your associates and then you to your bachelor's. Or you can skip your associates or CCAF if you would like and get your bachelor's. And if you're not going to go back, you don't have to worry about it. But personally, I went for my CCAF first and then for my bachelor's. Just because why not have 2 degrees, add something extra to the resume, especially an Air Force degree. I feel like it's a nice little, almost like memento. The next step is that you're going to have to do some training on there, and then you'll have to talk to someone at the education office, which they'll kind of be able to talk to you. Personally, I didn't feel like they helped me very much, or helped with this optimization that I'm talking about, being able to get your degree very quickly. Most of them were honestly amazed by how quick I was able to get it, because my degree, I was doing about 48 credit hours for the last 2 years for my bachelor's. And I don't think that's something that they really expect for active duty, but I'm telling you, it's possible. So after you talk to the education office and you've made your education goal, the next step you would think would be to sign up for classes, but actually this is where you're going to take the alternative route, and you're going to go to what's called CLEP/DSSTs. And I'm going to put on screen all the ones that I've personally taken. And what these are, if you're not familiar with them, is CLEP and Dante's, or DSSTs, are tests that you can take to skip a class if you pass one test. So you go in, you take like a 2 to 4 hour test depending on what class it is. And if you pass this test, which is free for the first time for all active duty military, normally it costs about $90 to $150 depending on how many credits. So you take this free test, and if you pass, you get all the credits for that class without having to take the class. So what I would personally do is I would go in, and I would just go in on a day that I was able to get off, or if I was able to sneak away from work for a little bit. Generally, people aren't going to turn you down if you're doing something for education. I would go and take a bunch of tests in one day, and I'll show you, the list should be on the screen right now. Basically, the way to do this is I would take let's say I take an English CLEP, right? So I take an English CLEP, let's say I don't pass it. Well, instead of going like, okay, well now I have to take the English class, I would go to the next English CLEP and try to get the credits for it. And if I failed that one, I'd go to the Dante's English CLEP, because the first time you take each test is free. So you can keep repeating this process, and all you need to do is pass one of those English CLEPs to get the credits for it. Or for the math, I'm horrible at math. I'm really, really horrible at math. It's my weakness. For math, this one I took college algebra, I believe, and failed the test for it. I took in the next math worth 3 credits. I failed that one, failed the next one. I finally passed one, I think it was the 4th or 5th one, and I was able to get my math credits. Never had to take a math class throughout my entire college experience. And so that's the real way to do this, is you just want to get all of these general ed classes out of the way just by taking these little tedious tests. Personally, I didn't study for any of them. I know a lot of people do. I did better when I didn't study. I studied for one and I failed it. So that's up to you. But those books and resources you can find usually on your base library or hand-me-down. Sometimes people just have them around. So I would be sure to look for those study guides, and it really is the quicker way to just try to take as many of those CLEPs and DSST as possible. I would say even over studying for them. Just keep taking them until you get the credits for them. And that way, that's one less class that you don't have to take. By doing this, I was able to get through, I think, a year and a half of general ed without even having to take a class. So that was pretty amazing, and that definitely cut my time. That's the biggest factor that cut my time in being able to get this bachelor's degree in a 4-year contract from no school. I mean, you gotta think I cut a year and a half off of school just by doing this. So I strongly, strongly recommend doing this. Now, what happens if you fail all of the CLEPs and DSSTs for a given subject? Let's say you fail all of the English ones, or you fail all of the math ones, or you fail all the available human resource ones. Now, this is where it comes in that you want to take the classes for those, because frankly, you have no other option. And when you go to take those classes for those, you have the option between a university and a community college. Now, this is where you need to be mindful of spending, because you could go to a university, but you got to think it's going to cost you $250, usually with a military rate and in-state tuition. It's going to cost you $250 per credit for a class. So if it's a 4-credit class, it's going to cost you $1,000. Whereas if you go to a community college, it usually costs about $250 a class. So you're looking at $250 a class for $1,000 per class. You definitely want to go to the community college. And the reason for that is because your tuition assistance will cover it. Now, the benefit of your tuition assistance being able to cover your classes is that financial aid that you applied for this, you get to pocket all that money. You can easily pocket that money, save it later for your university or invest it. But you get to pocket that money, and you'll be actually making a profit for a tiny bit until you go to university. Then it gets crazy, but you'll be able to pocket that money and actually profit off of taking classes, which is a pretty awesome thing. So that's why I recommend doing the community college route until the latest date possible, until you literally have your associates or you have no more general ed classes and you have to start going to university. Keep going to community college first. Okay, so now you've done all the CLEPs and DSSTs that you possibly can. You've made up all the ones that you couldn't pass with community college classes. So now you have your associate's degree, or you completed all your gen ed and you're ready to go to your bachelor's. Now there's a thing called the AU to ABC program, which is basically just a fancy program for saying that you're going to transfer your associate credits to your bachelor's. And some of your military credits should apply to that. For me personally, I had about 6 or 8 credits that applied for my military experience, basic training, tech school, and proficiency in my job that added to it, and was able to also apply to my associates, which then applied to my bachelor's, and I got those credits. So pretty cool thing, especially if your job has more technical aspect, and if your bachelor's is relating to your job even more so, you're likely to get more credits through that program. Now once you get to your bachelor's, there's some key things that you want to do. You want to make sure that you're getting the in-state tuition rate, and that occurs just by giving them your MyPay stub, or it's basically a payment stub to the school that you're attending, and they'll give you that in-state tuition rate, and then they'll give you a military scholarship rate as long as they're eligible, which you do want to make sure they're eligible. And then the cost, like I said, is going to go from $250 a class to about $1,000 a class, either $750 to $1,000 a class. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because your tuition assistance is only $4,500 per fiscal year. So you're only going to be able to cover about 1 semester of classes and a half. And if you're doing summer classes, you're going to be running a little dry. For me, I did 48 credits a year. And so I had to use some out of pocket even after tuition assistance and financial aid. I think I used about $3,000 to $4,000 in pocket per year, or out of pocket per year, towards my bachelor's. So you can either do the same thing as that, or if you're willing to spread it out more, if you have more time than I did in a 4-year contract, or if you're doing a 6-year contract, you can easily spread that out more by doing your $4,500 and then your financial aid per year. And then when it's exhausted, you just wait until you get your stipend back or your next financial aid. So then you can still do it debt-free that way. Otherwise, you're going to probably be paying out of pocket like I did a little bit in order to complete it. So this is generally the route that you want to take. Somewhat as an overview, you're going to do all the necessary requirements. Before you even start community college or university, you're going to want to take as many CLEPs and DSSTs as possible. And then only do the classes for the ones that you can't pass. And then from there, you're going to get your associates, or you skip straight to your bachelor's. And you're going to use tuition assistance, financial aid the whole way. You'll be able to pocket some money at first. Once you get into university, not really a chance. And you should be able to completely get your bachelor's degree, 4-year degree, before your contract is up. The 4-year contract is the shortest amount of time. So you should easily be able to get it in a 4-year contract, or a 6-year contract would be even much easier to be able to do this. And I strongly suggest doing it. A lot of people come out of the military without that degree, and they have to use their GI Bill for their bachelor's. And really, you could do it completely debt-free while you're in and save that GI Bill. It's very, very valuable, and that's something that you definitely want to save and either give to your spouse, your kids, or if you're pursuing a higher education, it has much, much, much more value being used on that than on a bachelor's degree. So I hope my comprehensive guide will help you all. Like I said, if you have any questions at all, message me in the comments, email me. I'll be happy to respond. I'm happy to help anyone. I'm going to put up some of my own papers to show how much money I really use out of the military. I believe I used around $9,000 in tuition assistance during my time of getting my bachelor's, and I'm not allowed to show how much of financial aid I used, but that was significant too. And that was all free benefits through the military that you can do while active duty.